Hello, Manchester, Auburn, Candia. Hey, this is the progress report for August 26, 2016. And by gosh, you know what that means? It's less than 2 weeks to the big election where we're going to determine the President of the United States, state office holders up and down the ticket on the ballot. And I know we've had a really divided electorate here. We've had people on both sides. You've seen people on the other side before me, and you'll see them after my show. But there's one thing we all agree on, folks. We're glad it's almost over. Nobody is unhappy to see the end of this election, and that's a good thing. When I think that the British, the government, after, the Brexit vote and the Prime Minister was out, it took them 1 day to elect a new Prime Minister. And we've been at this for, years. But in any event, we're going to have a good show tonight. And I couldn't be more pleased to have one of the people I most admire in Concord, our Minority Leader, Steve Shurtleff, with us. Steve, yeah, I know you're a busy guy, and I really appreciate you coming down to the Queen City to join me here on the
Glad to do
the set of the progress report. Steve Shurtleff, I'm going to let him talk about himself a bit, but Steve Shurtleff, the short version of this is, if the Democrats regain the majority in the New Hampshire House of Representatives, Steve Shurtleff will be the Speaker of the House. And that's an extremely important position, and nobody better qualified to hold that position than Mr. Shurtleff. Steve.
Oh, what can I say after that wonderful introduction?
Well, you can say a lot, and I hope you will. I want you to tell the folks a little bit about yourself and your background, because I think it's fascinating.
Well, okay.
Number one, you're not guilty of being a lawyer, like some speakers have been.
No.
But you do have a background in law enforcement. So
I do.
Talk about that.
Well, I was born and raised in Concord, and graduated from Bishop Brady High School in '66, and knew the college would not be in my immediate future, so I enlisted in the Army for 3 years and spent 1 year of that in Vietnam with the 552nd MP Company. And after my discharge, I joined the Concord Police Department, and then subsequently in 1974, I joined the U.S. Marshal Service and spent 3 years in Cleveland, Ohio. And then I was able to transfer back to the Concord office and retired as supervisor in the year 2000. And I was elected to the House in 2004 and a Concord City Councilor at large in 2007.
And you're still serving in the Concord City Council, are you not?
I am. So,
wow.
Keeps me busy.
Yeah. So you've always been a Democrat?
Yeah, my folks are Democrats, blue-collar Democrats. My dad was a plumber, and my mom worked at the New Hampshire State Library, and their folks were always Democrats. And in Concord, back in the 50s and 60s, it was a very Republican city, so to be a Democrat was somewhat unique. But as you know, Bob, back then, even a few years ago, being a Republican in New Hampshire was a little different. It was the Dwight Eisenhower and the Walter Peterson Republicans.
Right.
So it was very
Charlie
conservative.
Bass,
Charlie Bass,
Bass,
absolutely.
I mean, it
Justin
was definitely a different.
Yeah.
You can't recognize the opposition party today from what we remember in those days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People disagreed, but they weren't disagreeable, and
right.
they're always trying to look for common ground. So it was different.
Yeah. So, Steve, I know you're hoping that you will be, and I hope you will become the Speaker as a result of the caucus vote if we have the majority back.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that have? Maybe you want to tell a story about what happened to, make the Speaker happen last time, but maybe you want to just talk about some of the things that the Democrats have accomplished in the last. Mm-hmm. We haven't been the majority. We were, not this time, but last time.
Right.
And I think we had good accomplishments. But some of the things that have been accomplished, and maybe even more, some of the things that we've stopped that would be, detrimental to the best interests of New Hampshire.
Well, first of all, with the Speaker's race, which was 2 years ago next month now, I was a Democratic nominee, and Bill O'Brien was a Republican nominee, and
because he had won the caucus vote.
Yes, the support of the caucus.
Which is normally a kind of a no-brainer that if you win the caucus vote, And you're the majority, you're going to be the speaker.
Yeah, the Republicans were at 240 members, we were at 160, so as pro forma, the election for speaker, everybody assumed, especially Bill O'Brien, that it would be him. And he was already telling me things that he was going to do in his 2 years as speaker. And then just a few days before we get together for that very important election, Sean Jasper came to me and said, Steve, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and run for speaker and oppose Bill O'Brien.
Oh, he told you that?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought maybe he was recruited to do that.
No.
But no, he was already ready to do that.
Yeah.
Well, to his credit.
Oh, absolutely. It was a
Absolutely.
very gutsy thing to do.
Yeah.
And he said, will you and the Democrats support me? And I said, I can only speak for myself because our Democratic caucus is unique as opposed to the Republicans, because our Democrats make up their own minds on what they're going to do.
I want to emphasize that, Steve. I've heard Republicans accuse us of kind of voting in lockstep in terms
heard
of
the
our
same
leadership.
thing.
And I can only say, folks, and by the way, I hope you'll join the conversation, 413-0223, if you want to talk with Steve Shurtleff or, me, or we have Connie Van Houten. She'll be participating more as we move along. But I have heard every caucus you say, vote your conscience, vote what's best for your constituency.
Mm-hmm.
I have never heard you say, never, once, vote the way I tell you to.
No.
And I don't think those words will ever pass your mouth.
No, I just don't believe in that, and I don't think it's good for the people to send us to Concord. I've never talked to anybody about their vote, never called anyone, said, why did you vote this way and not that way? I'm very proud of the Democratic caucus and the intellect and the ability they bring to Concord. And for me to, as I've told the caucus, unless I live in your district, I have no right to tell you how to vote. Mm-hmm. That's your vote. That belongs to the people that sent you, not me. And I've heard the same stories. Oh, Shurtleff goes in and says, you got to do this and do that. And
It's not true.
It's just not true.
Never happens.
No.
Never happens.
So anyway,
And
I
I've
told-
been there a while, and I've
Oh.
never heard such a thing.
So when the now Speaker Jasper said, will you tell the Democrats or ask them to vote for me? I said, I can ask them, but I can't tell them. And I did tell the caucus, I said, Bill O'Brien and Sean Jasper are two very conservative Republicans. O'Brien is far more conservative, but I said the difference is Sean Jasper respects the House, and he respects the people that serve there, and that's a big difference. And I'm voting for Sean. And so I withdrew my name from the race, and Democrats almost unanimously voted for Sean, and he won by 4 votes. And ironically, I had a message from Bill O'Brien through an intermediary a few days before that vote, and he said, you tell Shurtleff that if he does anything to help Sean Jasper, he'll not have a parking place, he'll not have a committee assignment, and then just remind him that it's actually the speaker who appoints the minority leader, and it ain't going to be him. So, but what are you going to do? You got to do the right thing. And I told our caucus, as you remember, Bob, politically, the best thing for us would be to have 2 years of Bill O'Brien to give us a lock on 16.
I remember you said that.
Yeah.
Because in the O'Brien legislature from 2010 to 2012, there were a lot of polls about what people cared about. Mm-hmm. But for the first time I can ever remember, people said that one of the things they cared about was the misgovernance in the House of Representatives under the leadership of Bill O'Brien.
Yeah. It was bad, and even the union leader did editorials about some of the things
Even
he
them.
pulled. Yeah,
Even
so I mean,
them.
it was awful. So anyway, our caucus voted for Sean almost unanimously, and he ended up winning by 4 votes. And we knew it was the right thing at the time, but I think it really came home to us about 4 months ago when Medicaid expansion came up, and to extend it for 2 more years. And I talked to the speaker earlier, and I said, Mr. Speaker, let me ask you, are you going to do anything to try to scuttle Medicaid expansion? And he said, well, right now, the federal government's paying 95% of the price of that. As long as the state doesn't have to pay that 5%, the difference, I will not do one thing to abolish Medicaid expansion. And as you know, there was a wonderful agreement between the insurance companies and the hospitals that paid that 5%.
Right.
Because they are both saving money under Medicaid expansion. I think it's 22% the emergency room visits are down in New Hampshire because of Medicaid expansion. So
Almost 50,000 people.
yeah, over 50,000 now.
Really?
It's gone over. It's tremendous. But on the day that we took up the vote to extend Medicaid expansion for 2 more years, the Republicans introduced a poison pill amendment that would have killed Medicaid.
Yeah.
And after a long floor debate, there was a vote, and everybody in the chambers looking at the scoreboards to see what the vote was going to be, and it was 182 to 182. Tie vote, and the speaker can make or break a tie,
Only when there's a tie vote can the
Right.
speaker vote,
or to make it a tie vote.
or to make it a tie
Yeah,
vote.
so the
Okay.
motion would fail. And all eyes were on Sean, and he didn't hesitate for a moment.
Not a minute.
Nope.
And he'd given you his word, and
yeah.
he gave us
We
all his word,
shook hands on it.
and he did. But let's not get too carried away. Sean remains a very conservative
Oh,
Republican.
absolutely.
Opposes us on so many things that we care about, whether it's restoring commuter rail to,
Oh.
you know,
Well, I had a call
Manchester
from
and-
Dave Solomon from the union leader the other day. Dick Hinch, the majority leader, put out a press release chastising Democrats for some of the bills they've already filed, and one of them is to extend permanently Medicaid expansion. And I said to Dave, I said it's somewhat ironic that the majority leader is condemning Democrats for legislation that the speaker voted for, but that's New Hampshire politics. But no, you know, rail is a prime example.
yeah.
You know,
I mean, there are others, but that's a prime.
that's one, and it's an important one. The Public Works Committee, which is a Republican-dominated committee and chaired by the former Speaker, Gene Chandler, came out with a recommendation to accept the grant money, the $4 million, and to study rail.
Which was not actually state money. It was
All
turnpike
federal.
credits,
Yeah,
which we already have and did not have another place to go.
right. And of course, New Hampshire's a donor state. We send more money to
Yep.
Washington than we get back.
Yep.
And on the floor, Republican leadership, including the Speaker and the Majority Leader, worked hard, and they killed it.
Yeah.
And to me, it makes no sense. You know, I look at 93 and the current expansion, and as you know, Bob, they can't expand it anymore because of the impact
Right.
of salt on the watershed.
And there's a well-known effect that you improve the highway, you induce more traffic. And,
Absolutely.
And before you know it, the highway's congested again.
Yeah, we need to look to alternative means of transportation. And I understand there's one international airline that said if they could get rail coming to Manchester Airport, they would make that a destination.
And it's no question that the director of our Manchester Airport and has consistently advocated for this this rail extension because it would include the airport, and we could maybe gain international
And
visitors.
that means jobs.
And that means jobs. It's
Yeah.
it's a huge thing, and we certainly agree on that. Steve, what did I want to ask you here? In addition to, by the way, I have to say, in my time in the House, which I've enjoyed enormously, and I thank you for much of that,
Oh, thank you.
being a pleasure. I've never had a more satisfying day than the day when we helped the Republicans, the Republicans that were not with the O'Brien faction.
There weren't many.
There were not many.
No.
I mean, we had now 3 opposition parties. We had the Democrats, we had the O'Brien Republicans who went off and even had their own office somewhere in town, which they didn't pay the rent apparently.
The government in exile.
The government in exile.
Yeah.
And Sean Jasper. That was the most satisfying, one of the most satisfying days I've had in Concord.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate your leadership on that because you did hold us together and we did accomplish this result. But Sean Jasper, I don't want to be too nice to him because I don't agree with one things.
No.
But John Jasper and I guess his majority leader, they faced a horrendous primary challenge this year. You want
Terrible.
to tell us about that?
Well, the Americans for Prosperity, which is the co-sponsored organization, particularly, and a lot of people on the far right, which is a good part of the Republican caucus, went after him, and a lot of out-of-state money came in. Sean ran in a district of 11 reps. He normally comes in the top 3. He came in 8 because of
Out of
all the
11.
out of 11.
Yeah.
Dick Hench out of Merrimack is the district with 9 reps. They had 18 reps running in that district, and many of them to go after Republicans that they didn't think were pure enough or didn't vote the right way. And Dick said he's always a top vote getter. This year he came in 5th. A lot of
Wow.
mailing, a lot of postcards, a lot of
Yeah.
phone calls.
And I know a few people that actually were taken down, Republicans that I considered
Yeah.
friends and allies on the Science and Technology and Energy
Oh,
Committee,
including your chair.
including our chair, including Jim Devine.
Yeah, another one.
And, they did lose. They were primaried and they did lose. I mean, we got to think about this, folks, what's happening to our
Yeah.
democracy. Because this is, first of all, not particularly in-state support.
No,
It's mostly
Right.
largely out-of-state support, and it's unaccountable money that we can't trace, except
Mm-hmm.
we know it's coming in to promote a certain ideological agenda that doesn't have New Hampshire at the center of its concerns.
and you know what surprises me, Bob, is in the current House, 174 Republicans took the Americans for Prosperity pledge, and there's like 5 different things they promised to do in Medicaid expansion, no new state expenditures, things like that, and it goes on. And I just don't understand, because, I know like yourself and like Connie will be, we take it seriously that we're representing the people in our district.
We do indeed.
And that's who we make our pledges to, not to a Virginia-based organization.
Yeah,
And to have someone tell you on the floor, well, I can't do that because I signed the AFP pledge.
yeah,
But it's good for your district. Yeah, I know, but I signed the pledge.
yeah.
So it's disheartening at times.
That is the most frustrating thing I've found in Concord, Steve.
Yeah.
Is the ideological
Yeah.
determinism of where people are going to come out. They've taken a pledge, or they've said no new fees, no new taxes for anything, no matter how well justified. And if the case is made, it's an overwhelming case in many cases. They still are there saying, "I'm gonna go with this ideology."
Yeah.
The facts be damned. It's very troubling. It really is.
Well, we see it too with people that move into the state from other places and run as Republicans, and they'll run against incumbent Republicans whose family have been Republican here in New Hampshire since President Lincoln and Senator Hale, and they'll point the finger and say that person's a rhino, Republican in name only.
Republican in name only.
Yeah, and it's just amazing.
Yeah. So, Steve, I want to be optimistic. I want
Yeah.
to think we're going to get the majority. We're going to make you the speaker. What would be your priorities for your
Well, I think
your role as speaker,
the
'cause that's a very
opioid
important
crisis
position.
is still with us.
Number one,
and you
yeah.
know that better here in Manchester than a lot of
It's
communities.
definitely a central point.
As I've said, Manchester is the epicenter, and Manchester police do just such a wonderful job.
Yeah, we got a great chief.
Absolutely.
We got to really, we have a good community effort to
Yeah.
deal with this, but it's horrifying. It really
It is.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. What more do you think we could do at the state level to help?
Well,
deal
I
with
think
this?
treatment programs, they're saying now treatment programs, maybe keeping people more in their communities.
Yeah.
We passed great legislation. You talked about what we did get passed. One of them was a bill to provide $2 million for housing. And we saw the problem with people going to drug treatment centers, and they come out and they go back to the home, the neighborhood where they came from, and they're right back to taking drugs again because of the peer pressure. Now they can go to a neutral location, a clean house, stay there, get themselves straightened out, and become productive members of society again.
Yeah, that's very good.
It's a three-legged stool. It's the enforcement, not for the addicts. Our hearts go out to them, but to those that are bringing the poison in. And it's education and it's treatment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I think I'd like to see us do more next session, and I commend the Manchester native Justice Broderick, John Broderick, the
Yep.
mental health. It really is
Oh, yeah.
something that we have dropped the ball on.
Yeah,
our prisons.
in which he has a very compelling personal story, of
Oh,
course.
absolutely.
And that informs a very, very
Yeah.
generous, giving spirit to address this issue.
I'd like to see us do more, bring rail, at least up to Nashville, look at Manchester, possibly Concord for additional rail
yep.
traffic to see the viability. I would like to see us find, if we could, to return some of that money to local communities that the O'Briens, and even under the current leadership, has taken away from cities and towns. I was at a candidates forum up in Franklin last week, and one of the Republicans running for re-election said, well, Bill O'Brien was the last person to reduce the state budget. And I pointed out he did it by downshifting to cities and towns, which
Right.
means local taxpayers. And the biggest issue, we paid the 25%. The state promised to do this for the cities and towns for the retirement of teachers in Group 2, firefighters and police officers, to have them be part of the state pension system. And then, unbeknownst to anybody, they just said, no, we're going to make the cities and towns pay that themselves. And for Concord, that was $2.1 million we never saw coming.
Yeah. And another thing in that field is, we have a long history in Concord of supporting school building projects.
Right.
And
Now we have the lawsuit.
we've lost that.
Yeah.
And I would like to see that come back so we could help, our cities and towns with their
Absolutely.
educational programs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, we took some of the rooms and meals money away.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things that we've done that have actually really impacted local communities.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Okay.
I don't know, but it's going to be interesting, that's for sure.
It's going to be interesting. Folks, I think we're about ready to say farewell to Steve. You got some.
Well, it's always a pleasure. And it's so
You know,
nice seeing Connie as
It's
well.
really wonderful. We have Connie here. We'll
Like I
be
told
talking
Connie, I'm her warm-up act. And after me, she'll sound even better than she already does.
Oh,
so
I don't
that's
know.
Great.
Yeah, you did a terrific job.
Oh, I know about that. But it's always nice being here.
But
with Queen
thank
City.
you so much for coming down. I look forward to calling you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, thank you.
I'm pretty hopeful and optimistic that that's
Well.
going to be the case, and I'll be very, very proud to do that because
Well,
you've
thank
been
you.
a
It means a lot,
wonderful
Paul.
leader for us. And we have this situation where the country seems so divided. I mean,
Oh.
this presidential campaign, we're all just so glad it's going to be over. It's horrible. But you're reaching your ability and success in reaching out to the people on the other side who are willing to engage.
Yeah.
There are those who are not, but those who are willing to engage, like Sean Jasper and Dick Hinch, although we have our definite disagreements.
Absolutely.
I mean, that is what we need to have to make things happen in the state of New Hampshire
Yeah.
for the benefit of all the people.
Yeah, we've got to put people above politics.
We
that's for
really
sure.
do.
Well,
Okay.
Bob, thank you so much.
Thank you very
What a
much.
pleasure.
Thank you for coming down. Okay.
Connie, so good seeing
You
you.
as well, Steve. Take
Okay.
care. Thank you.
Good night, folks.
Good night,
Good night,
Steve.
Manchester.
Thank you for your service to the state.
Thank you.
Okay, Connie. Now it's you and I.
Oh, that sounds good to me.
And you want to be a state rep?
I do.
And I think you'd be an excellent one. Why do you want to be a state rep?
Well, thank you for your commendation of me. There are many reasons, actually. As you know, I'm in my second term as a school board representative, and my heart
Which
and
has
soul-
been very frustrating in many ways, but we can talk
It
about
has.
that later.
It has, and it has been very empowering in many ways as well too. But my passion for education and my interest in doing things at the state level as well has kind of brought me to the candidacy for District 45, which is actually wards 10, 11, and 12,
Yep.
rather than the 12 in which I represent the school district. My passion for education is very strong. We have federal legislation which has evolved. No Child Left Behind is becoming ESSA, which is Every Student Succeeds Act, and that will be funneling down through the states. The states will be taking, from what I understand, a stronger role in putting that, implementing that into our cities and towns. I'm not a one-trick pony by any means, though.
No.
I certainly have a lot of the concerns that you gentlemen have mentioned as well. I would love to see rail come to our city, and if not to our city, at least to our state. I think it would be a great way of helping our city and state to grow. I think it would just be an astronomically great pleasure to be able to ride the rail to Boston,
Yep.
to make it part of tourism. So that's one of the things that I'm concerned about. The opioid crisis, again, I see that mostly in the context of education. I see how that's impacting our families and our children, and how we as educators have to now look at how that's going to work. And so I applaud some of the efforts that have come down from the state level and some of the ones that were just mentioned here by Steve. So those are the primary things, but beyond that, I think I care about growing our economy. I think about having our transportation support us instead of be against us. I'd like to see renewable energy. There are just so many causes about which I have been passionate about throughout my life that I would like to continue to champion. I am in the stage of my life in which I need to make sure that what I do to give back is impacting as strongly as it can. I have been very fortunate. The city and state have been good to me. I am a native of both. And with everything that has come to me, and I'm certainly no different than many people, I just want to give back to some degree, whatever I can.
Well, I certainly think you're doing that, Connie. Why don't you tell us, I mean, probably a lot of people, I hope we're watching this, who may know this, but why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, because you have a distinguished background in the very fine profession of education.
Well, thank you. I'm very proud to be an educator and proud to say that I continue to be an educator, although I'm not teaching for the Manchester School District. As I said, I'm a native of Manchester. I was born here. I actually was born on the West Side, which I represent. I went to West High School, and I live on the West Side now. So the West Side has been a really major part of my life. I went to Wilson School at age 5, and right through the district, all the way through to my graduation at West High. I did the traditional route of the University of New Hampshire and came back to Manchester to teach. Spent 36 years teaching at Manchester Memorial High School. Very good years. I was very happy to be there, but because of a family situation, I decided that it would be time to retire, and I stayed home to care for my mother, who was critically ill. In the interim, I started teaching at the community, well, actually, I started teaching at UNH Manchester, and I taught a bit at St. Anselm, and then I kind of settled at the Manchester Community College. I'm still technically employed by them. I think they have been gracious enough to give me the semester off, knowing that I was campaigning. It's a fantastic way to teach young people. I was supposed to be teaching college composition this semester, and I am not, and I'm very thankful that they gave me the time to do this. Additionally, I started teaching English as a second language to adults. My own family is a family of immigrants on my mother's side, and they just never had the advantages because they couldn't access the language as well. As a small child, I think they towed me, my grandparents particularly, towed me all around Manchester translating for them. It was less than ideal, although for me it was a richness of the bilingual, bicultural experience. For them, it perhaps was a bit taxing as I tried to translate words I didn't know in either language because I was way too young. So that's who I am. I am currently on the school board. I'm serving in my second term for Ward 12. Obviously, my passion and my interest are totally embedded in education.
Yep.
I'm just so empowered by what I see in the city. And I'm going to put a quick plug in for my little show. I have a radio show here, WMNH 95.3 FM. And the reason why I mention the show is because it's entitled What's Cool in Manchester Schools. So
That's a good title.
It absolutely is. And one of my concerns is that so often our education, which really, really is so good in so many ways, just takes the knocks, and we don't look at the good things that kids are doing.
Right.
The community, parents, we have great community involvement.
And we have award winners, you know.
We
We
do.
have the School of the Year, Principal of the Year.
Northwest in our
Northwest, my own part of the
Absolutely.
city.
Shelley LaRochelle.
Shelley
who is
LaRochelle.
doing a great job in a school that's overcrowded.
Yep.
And she's one of many across the district. Parker
Yep.
Varney has been shining.
Yep.
We have many, many accolades that have come to us, and I think it's time for us to sing those songs, those
Yes.
tunes,
Yes.
while we attend to business, the
Yep.
business of improving things in Manchester.
And you know, one of the things that I often think about, Manchester is a city of many, many communities. And now we have communities from places we never maybe thought we would, like
Right.
Somalia and Bhutan and I don't know, Bosnia. I mean, we have these communities. And that should be a source of educational opportunity enrichment.
Absolutely.
Don't you think? And
Absolutely.
And why do we think we are doing enough to have it perceived that way? I mean, what a wonderful opportunity to have kids. I mean, I don't know what's going on at West so much anymore, but you know, it's central with all the languages being spoken. I mean, this has got to be a wonderful educational opportunity for us, doesn't it?
It absolutely is. And Manchester really has been built on immigrants, as our country has.
Absolutely.
So that kind of rich sharing of cultures, sharing of foods, sharing of ideas, as well as the sharing of commitment. From the other end of the spectrum, the adults that I teach coming to Manchester to learn a new language, to become part of a new culture, that is very important to them. But I also see the other end. They are parents of the children in our schools, and their struggles to understand the roles that their children are playing in schools are very, 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 very valid. But they have an energy and a passion, for the most part, for their children to become strong citizens and members of our schools. And so we see that in the schools as well. I am just totally empowered, I think, when I realize how much we are just a nation of people that brings ideas together to make us stronger and make us greater. I prefer to go from the optimistic end in everything that I do. And that doesn't mean that I'll overlook the things. I will roll up my sleeves and I will work to make things better. But I want to make sure that we validate what is good in our district.
You know, there was a story in the paper the other day which I read about I think it was a Syrian refugee family, and God knows those people are being demonized in this political campaign in a way that's disgraceful. But it was a family of a bunch of kids and they were going to school and they loved it. And they thought that the fact that they had to not go to school on Columbus Day was a dirty trick on them. They loved school so much. That was a touching and powerful story about what our public schools can mean to people coming from here and far to become Americans.
And for them, it's the academics, absolutely, that they haven't had a chance to access. But for them, it's a social venue in which they learn to be growing adults, in which they learn to be who they are, in which they can network and make friends, in which they can learn about professions. Our community partners are astronomical in Manchester. They network with us beautifully. They are part of, actually bring us funds to support some of the programs that we'd be lacking otherwise. And they do recognize that cultural diversity that we have, and they do see the value in that.
Got to be
I think
enriching.
our teachers do too. And the kids.
Yeah.
You'll see kids from all sorts of different backgrounds, and there are just no barriers between them.
Yeah.
That's why our young people in the schools learn the language so much more quickly than do their parents.
Oh, sure.
They're just immersed in it.
We have a history of that in the immigration in this country, The kids learn the language and they teach it to their parents.
That's it. That's how I did it with my grandparents, although,
Really?
as I said, they were older and it was more difficult for them to access the language. Yeah, we have, we have issues that are also inherent in having a diversity in our schools, and I don't know if you want to talk about some of the issues that have come up as a result of that. We've had to craft.
I would like
policy.
to.
We've had to
Go
craft
right ahead.
policies. Yeah, it's a little bit old news at this point, but we've had to craft policies that allow for diversity. We've had to deal with OCR, the Office of Civil Rights,
Right.
and to deal with issues that they've had. And most of this came in under Dr. Livingston, our previous superintendent. And one of the big concerns that has come up in the past has to do with issues of hiring teachers and staff who best reflect the students in the classroom.
So shouldn't we have as much, or at least some degree of diversity in our core of professionals, teachers, and administrators that we do with our students?
Absolutely.
And there's been some pushback on that by a certain member of your school board.
Yes, and I'm not sure that it's that kind of pushback that is total negativity. I think it's a matter of just not kind of understanding what's going on. But absolutely, I think there are two components there. One, absolutely, we have to hire the best teachers. That is without question. That doesn't preclude hiring teachers of different nationalities
Right.
and different ethnicities. And so what we need to do is to cast our web a little bit further when we are looking for teachers to hire. To bring people to us, which is only going to enrich our community.
Yeah.
We are the digital community in the Millyard, for instance,
Yep.
is young people for the most part who are coming from other parts of the country who
Yeah.
want to be part of us, and they're investing in our structure. It's the same kind of thing that we can see with those teachers. There was pushback on that. To the credit of the school board, we did pass it, but in getting to that point, we had an unfortunate incident. There were some young people who had come, ironically, to watch Democracy in Action. It was an August meeting, and they were part of a summer program. And they were upset by what they heard, by the language, excuse me, that seemed to diminish that idea
Yeah.
of bringing in teachers of other ethnicities. They ended up leaving. I didn't know why they left. I saw them leave, and I just simply continued because I was taking the opposite viewpoint. Another school board member spoke to these youngsters. They were high school age in the corridor and found out what the problem was. And so,
And I understand it wasn't a protest, it was they just very disappointed at what they were hearing.
right, they didn't speak, they didn't make any gestures whatsoever. They quietly and politely left. So I just thought they were leaving for whatever reason. I didn't think anything of it because I just tend to see kids as kids. That's all I see. And we did find out that they were upset by that. There was an issue, these things came up in August. There was an issue about books as well. And most of these issues had not come to any kind of attention in the city, primarily because these things started in subcommittee. And in subcommittee, most people don't follow the subcommittees. We had a grant, a reallocation grant, which is money that has been returned to the state because if you don't, it's a use it or lose it deal for your
Sure,
grant.
sure.
So it wasn't money that had been originally earmarked for us. So in that sense, we considered it kind of free money. Our district administrators had diligently and very well sought that money. I believe it was about, don't quote me on this, but I think about $248,000. And there were three components to it. One of the components involved our school, Northwest. They were doing a closer reading program as a pilot, and the rest of the city wanted to also purchase the books and to get in on the pilot. Books K to 5. And when it first came up in subcommittee, the first concern was titles. Nobody had read the books. We had not read the books. I'm on the committee, curriculum and instruction. And there were a few books on the table in front of us. I'm not sure that I recall all of them right now, but one of them was Jackie Robinson, a good role model for our kids.
Sure.
Another was Amelia Earhart, and I believe Nelson Mandela was a third. Culturally different than our typical books that you and I would have had when we were children.
Right.
And so there were concerns voiced about that. The books were designed to be read to our youngsters, to be read out loud. So there's no concern about reading level. A qualified teacher would be reading them to the youngsters. And there was really no concern about anything because we had not read the books. It ended up being tabled, brought back, when Dr. Livingston brought some of the specialists from our schools in, a reading specialist and a teacher who had taught that. And the evolution was rather long until we finally got to that, and it just seemed that the subject matter was of concern. When it finally got to the full board, it actually became something a little bit different. I tried to stop the whole thing. I read from the policy stating that educators, our administrators, our teachers, our staff were those who were entitled to choose the books, not the policymakers, the school board members. However, the topic became a little bit more embroiled than that. This time it changed a little bit. This time it became more a look at content being age inappropriate, which again, I don't believe is my purview. And I just want to clarify, I am an English teacher. Teaching those types of things, that's where I come from. So that became another issue as well. And I do believe in both cases it was a matter of not celebrating diversity as it should have been celebrated. There were comments made along the line about fostering political agendas, fostering social agendas. I realize that taking them out of context now makes it sound a lot worse than it was at that point. Ultimately what happened was, and these were finally passed, but ultimately what happened was as the public became aware of the situation, they rose to the cause. And we had one meeting during which we had probably an hour and a half or more of public testimony. And our testimony from the public is in 3-minute increments. So many speakers came to the microphone, including some of the young people who had been concerned about the issues beforehand. And we had our city standing up to once again say who we are, that we believe in diversity, that we believe in educating our youngsters in a way that is best for them, that we believe in the whole integrity of a group of people that values every single individual, young or old. It was a really empowering evening. So from something that was a little bit, I shouldn't say a little bit, to me it was very uncomfortable. I was taken aback incredibly by this. However, it ended up with just a really cool outcry and coming forward of our citizens from different walks of lives and different ages, who came in to say, not in our city.
Yeah.
In our city, we accept everybody, we educate every youngster, we just have an embracing value that we give to every youngster, and we educate every youngster as best we can.
So the concern about these books, which seems to me amazing that there would be concern about a book about Nelson Mandela, and I forget the others you mentioned, but that did not prevail.
No, it did not.
That's good.
And the full board, to clarify, the full board was supportive of moving this forward. It's just that the whole topic came to light, and I was actually mortified that it came to light. That is not the way
Yeah.
our city should be, and that's not the way our education should be. But I applaud our city for standing up.
Yeah. So I know in your career on the school committee, you're in your second term, you said?
Yes, I am.
And I know you've had some frustrations about not being, considered for subcommittees and a participation that you thought you should be entitled to be considered for. Where's that stand?
Well, my first concern was that Northwest, the singularly strongest impetus for redistricting, had come up, and I hope to be on that committee.
Because that's a very overcrowded school.
It is, and I'd hope to be able to bring the concerns of my constituents to the table. And then the superintendent's search committee was also one from which I was not accepted. There was some kind of a concern. There was a statement or several statements made that I had voted against both committees, and therefore why would I be put on them? I have clarified that with the board. I actually voted for the redistricting committee, and not against it, although I did speak about the alternatives and speak about the laws and the policies that dictate it, but I voted for it. And then summarily, I have my own ways of making sure that I support our district. I attended every one of the meetings. I had better attendance than most of the committee. I brought 5 proposals to the committee. I did considerable research. I helped craft the questionnaire that was used by our teachers. So I find a way to make myself be party to making our things better in our district. The superintendent search committee, similarly, that one I did vote against. And in actuality, there were people who had voted against who were placed on the committees.
I remember reading about that.
It's
And
just
I have a question about your vote against that, because you said you were voting against the process, not
the
against the person.
superintendent, yes.
Is that
Yes.
what you were talking about? or-
Absolutely. No, I wasn't. I was talking
Okay,
about
I'm
the
sorry.
superintendent search committee.
Okay,
but
I'm sorry.
absolutely,
I jump
will
ahead
answer
then.
that. No, please.
Okay.
Yes, I did. I did vote against it. There was nothing is ever what it seems on the school board. My initial inclination was to abstain from the vote because I do have concerns about the process. I am not making any negative statement about the man. I've spent some time with Dr. Vargas. He started to come to our meetings with us, and I'm very optimistic about what's going to happen.
Well, I hope so, because he's our guy for the,
Absolutely.
and, however long he's there, he's the guy.
Absolutely.
He was the only one at the end, but he's the guy.
And that was my biggest concern, that I
Yeah.
was asked to choose the best candidate of one. Our policies indicate that we should bring 3 candidates.
Yeah.
And I realized that there were 3 and that 2, for whatever reason, dropped out. But there were others who had been previously interviewed who could have been brought up. So I had some definite concerns about that. And I had spoken to many constituents who'd asked me to not vote if we couldn't have a slate of choices.
Yeah.
And so my vote was predicated on that. I have spoken to Dr. Vargas, and I did publicly state that I will do everything I can to support our district, which is
Right.
to support him as well. And that doesn't
Yeah.
mean that I won't speak up if I
Yeah.
disagree.
He's the guy. Unless you're gonna
is.
tell him to go, you got to support him.
He is, and he's hit the ground running already. He's immersing himself in our district, and he's reaching out to the community, to everybody. And it's daunting to get started, but I see some very good signs and some very hopeful signs for our
Okay.
district.
So there's a couple of big issues that seem to be, I don't know if they're hardy perennials, but they've been around for a while.
Sure.
One is the issue of redistricting. How are we doing on that, and how do you think we should resolve that? We do have, Northwest bulging at the seams, and other schools that seem to be, underpopulated.
Well, the redistricting process is on hold for the moment. That is simply to give Dr. Vargas a chance to get up to speed on this, and also to allow him to bring his different perspectives in. We have someone from a different school district who may well see things differently once he looks at it. Sometimes a new set of eyes will be very strong for us. The last proposal that was voted, or not voted by the full board, but voted by the committee to go forward, involved building an addition onto one of our schools, and again, we're talking probably about $5 million in order to do that. And so that was the primary component of that particular one. The vote came up, I'm not sure who made the motion. I believe it was Dr. Avard, and it was seconded by Nancy Tessier, I believe. And that was to go forward. However, both, and I applaud them and I commend them wholeheartedly, both heard from constituents who were concerned about that. And so they withdrew the motion, and so there's no current motion on the table. There were 4 proposals that came forward. One is a reconfiguration of the west side, changing the grade levels, changing the primary, the lower levels, I believe, to K-3, and then changing Parkside to 5 to 7, don't quote me on that, and then moving the 8th grade into West High School. There have been concerns about that, and there are people who applaud that plan as well. So we have currently 4 proposals, but each of them pretty much involves some reconfiguration. That's a hard sell in our
It
city.
sure is.
Do people want an 8th grade youngster to be in a high school in which conceivably there could be 21-year-olds? By law, a 21-year-old can continue to attend high school as a special ed student. The other issues are money. Can we build a new school? Can we?
Yeah.
And I've proposed building a new school, and the reason why I proposed it is because I wanted everything on the table. Let's put everything out before we start to choose through. So money is an issue. Redistricting in the sense of just moving lines is an easy option, it would seem. But if I bought my house on this street specifically to send my child to this school, will I be happy? Will I not speak up when I'm redistricted and my side of the street goes elsewhere?
Very tough issue.
It is. And while I understand it, I firmly believe that every one of our schools has tremendous quality. But it's a mindset. You know that you went here because you wanted your kids to go to Northwest.
Yeah.
The other schools are excellent schools. If we shifted over to Webster, crossing the river, people think, why are we crossing the river?
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, we're not asking youngsters to swim. We're going to have regular transportation here. But it's a mindset. It absolutely is a mindset. And so there are some hurdles ahead of us. Leslie Want has been chairing the committee. She is a freshman on the school board, and she has been putting a great deal of time and effort in on this one.
Yeah. Do you think, Connie, that, I've always said if we don't have an education system that attracts people to want to come here and send their kids to school, our goose is cooked.
Absolutely.
And do you think we're making progress on that front? Because I hear, a tremendous success in the Manchester schools. And you've talked about some of it, We have the Miss La Rochelle at Northwest being Principal of the Year or whatever it was, and Parker Varney, School of the Year in that grade classification. Are we turning this around where people say, we should come here and bring our young family here because our kids are going to get a great education in the Manchester School District?
I really believe we're on that road. And in addition to what we've talked about, we have the School of Technology, which in and of itself is an outstanding facility.
Yeah.
Our STEAM Ahead program acknowledges the the science, the technology, engineering, art, and the arts is included in there, as well as math, which are so important for 21st century skills.
It surely is.
So yes, we are, and I think a big key to continuing that is the redistricting. Many people, our class caps by state standards are 30. That's a large volume, and I'm talking about the upper grades here. That's a large volume of youngsters to teach.
Yeah.
And if you can go to Hooksett or to Pinkerton or wherever and have class sizes of 20, and
That's
that
an
is an
attraction.
option, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
My vision is that in the next 3 to 5 years, we will have those people knocking on our doors. We will have people who want
Think
to
we
come
can do
back.
that?
I think we can do that. We have
That's
to
really
redistrict
optimistic.
appropriately, and I think we have to continue to build those programs that are going to move us forward. One of the proposals that I submitted to the redistricting committee, it has issues. It's a proposal only. It's not anything else. But I have suggested involving some academy work, setting up maybe a business academy, maybe setting up an academy for gifted and talented, maybe setting up other kind of tech skills, because we could network right across the street to Memorial High School for some of these programs as well. I think if we continue to look forward, and I think another key factor, of course, is funding.
Yeah.
There is no doubt.
Do you
that
think
we
we're
have-
adequately funding our schools in the city
No.
of Manchester?
No, the short answer is no. The tax cap remains an issue,
Oh, the tax cap, yes.
and I don't believe that we are adequately funded prior to the implementation of the tax cap, and therefore,
Yeah.
just the tax cap.
So
on
we're
top-
starting off from too low, and
Exactly.
now we can't get above what we need. to where
Exactly.
we
I
need.
think that that's critically, and that's why these types of grants that we get, like that reallocation money that we get, to be able to do the little extras that will be so important to our youngsters, to take them from just the regular
Yeah.
classroom. The evolution of education right now is absolutely fantastic. You and I you probably sat with me in rows of maybe 5 by 5 or 7 by 5. And today we're learning that youngsters sitting together on mobile chairs, on wheelchairs, with those large balls for stability, to maximize a youngster who has maybe a difficulty with attending to what's going on in class, and then mobile furniture that we can group and regroup, and project-based learning. We just have a lot of things that, and I want to just clarify, I'm not saying that the way you and I learned was bad. It was okay for then. For today, the world is different. We're
Yeah.
trying to educate kids for futures that we can't fully envision.
Right.
And so we really have to stay on the cutting edge of that. I firmly believe that class size and funding are keys
Yeah.
to bringing us around. I have great faith in this district. We have fantastic teachers. We have fantastic administrators.
Well, that's good to hear.
We have professional
We have to sing
develop-
their song.
Absolutely, and we have professional development. We just don't stick them into classrooms and allow them to flounder there. We take their needs into account, and we bring them the professional development that will help them to fly as well. If we all fly together, we're good. We're really good.
It's exciting. It's an exciting time to be, I think, part of what's going on in the city of Manchester in so many ways, and lots of things left to do, but nothing is more important than our public education system, and you're a great contributor making that, continuing the excellence that we need to achieve. And I really applaud you for what you've been doing on the school committee, and I hope you become a state representative. I presume you may want to be on the education committee. I presume maybe.
Definitely do. That would be a
that
hope
would be
for me.
that would be a great thing, because I think we could do more to help out at the state level for our communities, including the largest community we have in the state, which is our own city of Manchester.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Connie, for being with us, and thank you for running, and thank you for serving on the school committee. You know, it's people like you that make you think this democracy is going to continue to work. And folks, I forgot to mention that I'm here without my good buddy Mike Farley, who's usually on my side. Mike, I know you're not here because your dad recently died down in Florida. I know the wake is tomorrow. My condolences and best wishes, and I can't wait to have you back. But my thoughts and prayers are with you and the rest of your family, because you're a great part of the city of Manchester yourself. And, you know, next week we'll be back. It'll be the last program before the election, so I can't imagine we won't not talk about that. But in any event, I think this has been fun, and I don't know where everybody is on the calls, but You've been great, Connie, and Steve was great, and we'll be back with you next week for another edition of the Progress Report. Before we all go to vote, and please vote, folks, please vote. We want the biggest turnout ever in our city, in our state, and in the nation. Take care. We'll see you next week.